Hello and welcome. Yes, that's right. It's been a couple of weeks and I am back ready to go. And when I was looking around thinking, what could we possibly talk about? Well, it's all around us, isn't it? A little bit like love for wet, wet, wet. It's just going off. Whether you're in the WSL, whether you're in the Championship, there's results you wouldn't have expected. There's people doing well in the league that you might not have expected to do well in the league. And more importantly, there's players getting sent off and goals being scored so that points get achieved that you just wouldn't expect in the Championship. So let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. See you in a minute. I do like our intro. I really do. It's got a lovely little all about it. Okie dokie. Now I've got that bit out of the way. Hello, lovely to see you all. You've had a couple of weeks there while Connor and Laura have been looking after you. I've had some well-deserved rest, and now I am back ready to get into it all with three absolute legends of the game. Let's just drop around and see how they're all doing. Sean, feels like a long time no see, Sean. How you doing?
Yeah, really long time. Was it been all 3 days since I last saw you, Barry? But I love seeing your face, and it's wonderful to be on yet again. Thank you so much for the invite.
Honestly, it's like buses, isn't it? You don't see them for ages, and then boom, a couple at once, which is superb. If it does genuinely feel like quite a while since I've seen Laura, how are you doing over there?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I left my mouse on the other screen, so it took a while to travel across there. But yeah, all good, thank you. I'm pretty cold in my house, so hence I've got like a huge jumper on.
Oh yeah, you did look a little bit chilly there. You're not the only one. Keris in our previous show, she was a little bit chilly as well. So whereas me, here I am with my t-shirt on. So there's not
showing
sure
off.
Well, just showing off. Absolutely, absolutely that. And over here, lovely to see you as well, Beth. How are you today?
Hello, lovely to see you too. I am very well, thank you. Yeah, busy weekend, so excited to get chatting about it all.
Indeed. So I did think we could sort of look at this and go, let's look at this game, let's look at that game. But actually, I was really intrigued as to if I just asked you the question in the WSL, which result stood out for you the most? I wonder if you would be able to answer that question. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to choose my one just yet, because if I do that, then that just knocks it down to 5 that you could potentially choose from. But you can repeat what somebody else has said. That is allowed. So Sean, I'm bravely going to come to you first. Were there any results in particular out of those 6 that stood out for you as being, I don't know, amazing, unlikely, brilliant? Yeah, you tell me. Anything that stood out for you in the WSL this weekend?
There are 2, but I'm going to only stick to one. I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder just in case. But I am going to plug for the game at the Amex. Man United getting a draw away to plucky Brighton and Hove Albion. Obviously, you've just done a whole episode on it, on of United, which is brilliant. But I didn't get much of a Brighton perspective there, if I have to say so. But no, I think a real game of 2 halves. And I think I said in the build-up that it'll be a game where Dario Vidicic will make a lot of tactical changes, and it's about whether Mark Skinner can adapt quickly enough and react to those changes. And he didn't. He didn't in the second half. In the first half, I thought United were brilliant. Really suffocated Brighton with their press, and I didn't think we could get out at all. But Aguiman comes on, Paris scores, Bagley saves us. I think it's a result that shows, having listened to the show you've just done, and a lot of people saying is really happy with the draw. I think that shows how far Brighton have come as a club. That United are happy with the draw away to Brighton. That's not usually the case at all. So I think it's a result that shows how far Brighton have come and how on track they are. But for United, I don't think it's, like you said, I don't think it's a bad result. I think it's a good point away on the road, but tougher tests are to come. But no, for Brighton, I'm really delighted with that point, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come.
Just like to point out that number one, that is obviously a Manchester United fan channel, so you can't be too surprised if we don't throw too many things out there for the opposition. But look, for anybody who's watching who might be saying, look what I did. I immediately brought on the Brighton fan so that he could have his say on this one. So we shall have no dramas when it comes to impartiality there as well. And you also use the words, don't want to steal anybody's thunder. And I'm afraid, because this is the way my brain works, I'm going to have to do this bit now. So I apologise. I'm very much going into WFC mode here. But genuinely, I saw a video. Do you know where that comes from? The term stealing somebody's thunder. I can't remember the geezer's name, but it might have been about 100, 200 years ago. He was doing a theatre production and he'd come up with how to make the sound of thunder whilst in the theatre. And so he'd made this sound and he was really, really pleased with it. And then I think before he even had the chance to use it, somebody else worked out what he'd done and then used it in their own production without asking for his permission, hence stealing their thunder, because it was used for the first time there. And he's like, oh my God, what's happened here? So I presume that's true. I've seen it on the internet. It might not be, but what a wonderful story that would be if it was. So I apologise, but that's my brain back into its normal equal place now. I don't feel like I have to get that out there. And I can just throw it over to Laura. Did anything stand out for you?
I enjoyed that little anecdote. I like a word origin story. So yeah, no, I enjoyed that. I think there's a few you can definitely pick from. I think the one I actually watched most intently is the one I'm going to go for here, which is Liverpool versus Crystal Palace, because I think it says a lot about potential predictions coming into the season of people talking about Crystal Palace as relegation candidates, and will there just be this yo-yo of teams coming up from the Championship and then going straight back down again? And I think Crystal Palace's performance shows that they can definitely book that trend at some point. Emily's been talking about Liverpool, and yeah, Shane, I do agree with Shane. I do think that they did overperform last season, but I still think a team of Liverpool's calibre would be expected to beat what we've traditionally seen as a newly promoted side that would be struggling at this point in the season, still adapting. And I think Katie Stengel did an interview after the match, kind of talking about, we're not the newly promoted side, we're just another side that competes just as well as any other team. And I think that's really showing. I thought at times the match looked a little scrappy. Neither side really kind of state their claim on it. But at the same time, Crystal Palace had so many chances. They outperformed on XG. Katie Stengel missed 2 absolute sitters during that game, and I think they definitely could have won in the same breath as neither team really dominating. And to go away to Liverpool and be able to do that and put on such a good performance, going 1-0 ahead. I thought from a Liverpool perspective, Olivia Smith had another brilliant game, looked really, really good again. So she's definitely one to keep an eye on, and has been performing all season, even in what I'd say is maybe a slightly underperforming squad. Very injury hit as well, Liverpool, at the moment. But Grace Fisk returned in that match, so that'll be positive for them. But yeah, I just think it's a show of real intent from Crystal Palace, and I think it's really putting the pressure on the other teams that are kind of hovering around that lower table now, particularly your West Hams and your Evertons, to really, you need to do something if you're going to stay up this season, because Crystal Palace certainly already are, and on 4 points already, it's looking good.
No, I think I agree there, and Sifaway is already telling us off, saying she told us about Palace. We didn't believe it. I would like to withdraw myself from that accusation. I don't think I've ever said anything negative about Crystal Palace. I do try where possible to be as positive as possible about women's football in general. But if I did, then consider me told. Beth, for you, 4 games left to choose from. Is it one of the 2 that's been mentioned, or was there a different result that stood out for you?
I definitely think that Sean and Laura have made some really good points about the 2 games that they've spoken about, and they definitely were options for me, but I'm not going to repeat any of what's been said, and I'm going to go for the 2-0 Arsenal West Ham. Going into that game, I did not have high hopes for Arsenal. So when it went to 1-0, I wasn't there. I was down in Southampton. When it went to 1-0, I was kind of not completely surprised, obviously, but it was never to me a given that would happen. So for it to then go to 2, especially after everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks and how the start of the game up until that point. First goal was penalty in the 71st minute. I wasn't expecting Arsenal to score, to be honest. I thought by that point, I thought the game might have been done. That was on the fact that I wasn't watching it, bearing in mind that was just kind of keeping an eye on commentary and stuff. And having gone back and watched it, I have some kind of more, probably slightly more gathered thoughts on that. But yeah, for me, I think with an interim head coach having come in, I didn't think it was the right starting lineup for Arsenal. So based on those things, for me, that 2-0 was not quite what I expected from that game.
Well, there you go. Massive. Now, for me, my game of the weekend is one that we're going to kick off sort of talking about now, which was there was a brief moment on Sunday, and I am going to let my bipartisanship sort of slip just a little bit here, because there was a moment on Sunday when I was getting everything ready at Stevenage, doing my job very well, as I do, that I spied on the TV that Aston Villa were 1-0 up against Manchester City. And I giggled, and then I cheered a little bit, which left one of the ladies to go, "Oh, you're not happy about that at all, are you, Barry?" I'm like, "No, me, never. Why would I be?" And I did. I was really chuffed. But Manchester City, once again, have shown that they've got that grit, that determination. Would have been, I wouldn't say easy, but Laura's just said that the teams below Palace have got to try and do something. And Aston Villa are one of those teams. You know, they're on 2 points. They're behind in that race. And it is going to take one or two of them to try and pull away from the bottom in order to maintain their position within the WSL. But Man City, they weren't having none of it, were they? Lauren Hemp and Jill Roord obviously scoring the goals after Gabby Nunes had put them in a really good position. And there are people here, Sean, shouting out Lauren Hemp massively. Somebody saying that Lauren Hemp was or is currently, there we go, Sifaway again, there you go, put in the bid to be player of the season. Talk to me a little bit about Man City this season, because it's very interesting. Parallels get drawn sometimes, and please, when I say what I'm about to say, don't start getting in the chat and having a go at me, because you know that people do this. I'm not trying to say that it's the same thing, but there's been parallels between Gareth Taylor and Mark Skinner insofar as not having the greatest of times necessarily, not always having the greatest of relationships with players. But they've stuck with Gareth Taylor, even though they missed out on the Champions League and then sort of bouncing up and down. They've had a rocky couple of seasons. But looking at them now, top of the table, granted, if either Chelsea or Manchester United win that game in hand, if it ever gets played, then, you know, they're level. But City are having a really, really good season. And when you look at the traditional three that we always talk about, Chelsea, City, Arsenal, as being the major performers in the WSL, for City to have been that late into a game, to be losing, but to still switch it around, they are really showing that they are going to be up there this season, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think one thing you can look at City, and you can talk about Gareth Taylor as much as you want, but there's not been much change in squad size, in terms of the management, in terms of the players around him. It's still mostly all the same. And I think that does have its benefits further down the line. And you look at Chelsea, there is a change of manager there. There's been a bit of new players coming in. Arsenal obviously don't have Adeval anymore. But City have this consistency. And I think that does work for them in the long run. The fact that Taylor knows he can trust these players know what to expect from him. And when it comes to these situations, they know what to do. And I think it's brilliant that Lauren Hemp's getting the credit that she deserves, because when I think of the top players in the WSL, I don't feel like Hemp ever gets mentioned in the upper echelons alongside your Kerrs, your Wrightons, your Shaws, your Miedemars. But what she's done this season so far is absolutely phenomenal. And she really took that game to Villa. And yeah, she is world class. And when you look at the links to Barcelona last season, you see her in this form, and it doesn't come as a surprise. So, no, I think the fact that City have kept so much together over the last few seasons is so key to what they're doing now, and they're reaping the rewards of that, because I don't think there's been a total fast shouts. You can say, "Oh, that's been the best team in the league so far." I don't think there's a clear runaway, but City are definitely doing enough to put themselves into that running for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree there too much, Sean. Laura, for you, Man City, again, like I say, it's not an easy thing. You know, you go behind, keep turning it around, playing as well as they've played, 13 points out of their opening 5 games. I mean, you can't really argue too much with that, can you, for City? And, you know, that alongside, you know, the fact that they've got Champions League football as well to be looking forward to, it's quite a thing for them. I mean, they beat Barcelona as well, didn't they? Is that right?
Yeah, 2-0, which is
just
incredible.
get that, you know. I mean, like Barcelona, Champions League winners, got the best player in the world, and Man City have just got past them without so much as a by your leave, really. You know, so it's not like, it's looking quite scary for teams in the WSL.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you consistently saw with, I guess, the domination of Chelsea is that they'd win games that other teams might not have won, in the sense that you don't have to be 100% and you still get those wins. And I think we're starting to see that a lot more with City this season, because if you look at the game last weekend when they went 1-0 down to Liverpool and turned that around in the 90 plus stoppage time, essentially, Bunny Shaw got the winner. And that's the type of team that, you know, you go and you get those 3 points regardless of how you've played. And I do think Liverpool put in a really good display there. And I think the thing with Aston Villa and Liverpool in both those games is that they kind of sat back a little bit when they'd gone ahead and tried to protect that lead. And when you invite that pressure on, and you've got players like Hemp and Shaw, it's always going to be really, really tricky to hold on to that for the full 90. And they've kind of paid the price there. I think Villa did super well to execute their game plan in the first half in terms of keeping City at bay and then counter-attacking. They scored a brilliant goal, Gabby Nunes, as you said. But then to hold on to that, and I do think there's potentially that thing of, because I think teams are containing, I mean, Liverpool didn't, but I think Aston Villa contained Bunny Shaw quite well at the weekend. But they've got such a packed attacking lineup that you then go, well, we can't do Bunny Shaw and Lauren Hemp. And then Lauren Hemp dragged them to the win against Liverpool, and they had St. Polton in midweek and went down to them as well, which was just a crazy game where they conceded 3-2 was the final score. But Mary Fowler kind of did the same thing. So they've got a lot of players in form who can pop up and drag the team to success when they need to, and they've got that depth of quality across that front line. And it's kind of scary that they did that against Villa, and Viviana Miedemar's not even in the squad, and she's to return. So I think that has been kind of like, if Hasegawa gets injured or if anyone across their back line gets injured, there is potentially some worry. But from what they're doing at the moment, and they obviously had Wahhabi out after the Arsenal game, they've got Lizelle out at the moment, it's not been too much of a concern. And Lizelle stepped up massively in that Barcelona game. So I do think they look really, really quality and a real challenge this season.
Absolutely. I mean, Lucky's thrown in there to Sean, saying the pressure must surely therefore be on Gareth to deliver a trophy. Do you still think they're an injury away from trouble? Because, again, it's a disadvantage with the UWCL needing a consistent 11 is player management. But, I mean, I would just argue, I know that Laura's just brought it up as well, but you could say that about pretty much any club, that, you know, if you get an injury, it's going to cause you a problem. You know, Man United, they lost Jay Riviere. Man City didn't necessarily have Miedemar in as well for that one. So, you know, there's always these things. It's how you deal with them. And as a result, Beth, that's kind of where I want you to go with this one on the City one, because where is this coming from? Like, we saw City do all right last season. They didn't have the greatest of times the season before, you know. What's happened here? What's changed? Because as Sean says, there's not a huge number of players coming in. Miedemar's come in. That's about it, really. What on earth is happening at Manchester City? What are they putting in the lasagna? Because, like, what is happening? Explain it to me.
Oh, I wish I had an answer. Yeah, I guess over time, we're seeing those kind of relationships just strengthen so much on the field. So I think that's a part of it. But something that I also really wanted to point out was Jill Roord scoring the winner. She was the signing for them last season. Came in, was their kind of like statement signing of the summer, was unbelievable. Of course, unfortunately suffered her ACL injury and has just kind of had this astonishing comeback from it. She's like a class A example of like the perfect recovery as far as I can tell. But to come on, and I think it was the first 90 minutes that she's played, for like as in the first time she started since having her injury. And yeah, to score the winner and just play the way that she does, so kind of forward thinking. And I think it's honestly players like her that make such a big difference for City. Like, we've spoken about how good Lauren Hemp is. I thought she, from what I saw, had an unbelievable game this weekend. I think Mary Fowler doesn't quite get enough credit, in my opinion. I think she's a really, really talented young player who Gareth Taylor has done so well with. But I think we're going to see so much more of Jill Roord this season, and especially with her kind of back in the picture now, other clubs are going to be very nervous to face City, because even on the days where they've not played the most exciting football, they've not looked the strongest, they find a way. And ultimately, that is what wins you titles. So yeah, I think that as long as they don't have any bad injury luck, I think we could see City go from strength to strength throughout the rest of the season. Especially that win over Barcelona is going to have really fed their confidence, I think, because I'm not saying I didn't at all think they could do it, but 2-0 against Barcelona, like, at this point in time, how many teams can do that? I don't know if many can at all. So yeah, really interested to see how it goes, because ultimately it is the test of time and it is still early days. But they've shown a lot of promise at this point, I think.
Absolutely. And the chat getting involved there. Sifaway saying the mentality's changed, starting to believe just like Neo did in the Matrix. So there you go. Lovely. It's a good job Connor's not here. That would have straight over his head. City is one of those teams where there's no doubt they will score, not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And of course, I think what City have done is been patient with Gareth and are reaping the benefits. He's got them playing arguably the best type of football in the league. And then JJ says, remember when City fans were calling for Gareth Taylor's second? I do remember. That was how I started the conversation. It's a good job we're on this channel, Lucky, because I've got to be impartial. I'll see you over on WSC with that statement. Okay. I wanted to then look at Chelsea, because obviously Chelsea are having a really good start to the season as well. You know, they have performed incredibly well. They've not lost a game yet. One of only 3 teams in the league so far not to lose a game. Obviously played a game less because the game against Manchester United was not played. Sean, again for them, a tricky game against Spurs, London derby. You know, Spurs are not necessarily going to be the biggest test they're going to play this season. But again, potential banana skin. You know, they're 1-0 up. It goes to 1-1. And then an own goal just before half time gives them that lead once again. And obviously they then go off and score for fun to make it 4-1 before Spurs pull one back. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter at that point then, does it? But getting up to half time, it was a tight game. It could have gone either way. But Chelsea, much like City, it's quite scary again. Everybody, like for Chelsea, for me, I look at them and I think Sam Kerr gets injured and everybody sits there and goes, well, Sam Kerr's out now, so maybe this will be the time when Chelsea start to drop, and it doesn't happen. And then Emma Hayes leaves. And everybody goes, well, now that Emma Hayes is leaving, maybe this is the time when everything goes wrong and maybe Chelsea starts to trouble. And instead, Bon Pastor comes in and it's business as usual. It's almost as if she's just Emma Hayes in disguise because nothing's changed. That's quite a thing for Chelsea to be able to do, isn't it? And does that just show how good their structure is, that actually you can just take something out, but because they've got such depth all across the club, that actually it's going to take a little bit more.
And you mentioned the Kerr injury, and when you have injured players, you need people to set up. And the comments have all mentioned it already. And Johanna Rytting-Kaneryd, my goodness me, she's gone to a different level this season, and it's insane what she's doing. Week in, week out, she does something eye-catching, or she puts the momentum firmly on Chelsea's side. And I think she's as important to this Chelsea team as Bonmati is to Barcelona. I think she is indispensable to this team. And yeah, and credit to Chelsea as well. Obviously, when you've won the league so many times, you can obviously attract the best players and the best manager, but still, they need to be able to fit into the system, understand the culture and ethos of the club, and then take that onto the pitch and their tactics. And for the most part, I think Chelsea are doing okay. I'm still unsure about the defence because I think they invite too much pressure on them against the better teams, especially in second halves. They just invite too much pressure on and they ride their luck out a little bit. But they also create that luck with the attacking talent they've got. But and you mentioned it was a tricky game. I don't know what's happened to Tottenham. I think they've gone backwards a lot this season, and I refuse to believe it's just Clinton and Bizet have gone and they're now bad. But something seems really missing with this Tottenham team, and I don't quite understand what it is. And we all praised Villaham, and rightly so, last season for his tactics and how he's able to play against some of the bigger sides in the league. But yeah, Tottenham have really gone backwards. But with Chelsea and Bonpastor and everything she's done, you can't critique her. Like, fair play, she's come in, got a win over Arsenal already, got this win over Tottenham, and doing well in the Champions League. And to be honest, it's almost the perfect start to a season that Bonpastor could have wished for.
I think you're right. Lots of praise coming in for Chelsea at the minute. Laura, for you, I mean, it's very interesting here. Shane saying, Bonpastor said last night she's looking at tweaking the shape because their press isn't functioning properly. I mean, if that's the case and she's getting the results that she's getting at the moment, should everybody be just sort of like hiding in some sort of Anderson shelter every time they're playing Chelsea? Because it genuinely does just seem like it's business as usual.
Yeah, I think obviously they've got the mentality absolutely right around that club, and they're kind of. She's been left with a very well-built squad, and I think the sign of a good manager is that you leave behind a strong legacy. And I think Emma Hayes has done exactly that, because it's so easy to kind of carry on till, I guess, the bitter end and then leave a structure that's entirely dependent on you and isn't future-proofed. You're not planning for the future. You're not leaving players behind. But Emma Hayes left a squad that was absolutely ready to go out and continue to challenge. And I think that is predominantly, I think you can look at Chelsea's success this early on in the season and credit still Emma Hayes. Obviously, Sonia Bonpastor is a huge credit to her as well for keeping that atmosphere and keep continuing like that. I do think there's elements where Chelsea have maybe been quite fortunate. I think the opening game against Villa, Villa were unlucky to not get more out of that game. I think, as Sean mentioned, they've not always been entirely convincing across the pitch, but they have those players, like we said, right in Canard, who do just step up, and they have that depth of quality across their squad, which is going to be really, really hard to kind of challenge. I think maybe the fixtures have been kind to them in some ways, in the sense that they start against Villa, who also have a new manager. If you had the same, if like Arsenal City on the opening day, if they had City or they had Arsenal on the opening day, and you get your squad slightly unsettled and you don't get into that rhythm as a new manager, the pressure's set like immediately on. Like, can Bonpastor match Emma Hayes? But they were able to get into that rhythm. They met Arsenal, who's probably on paper the best side they've faced so far, at a really, really good time when Eidevall's literally about to go. And even then, I think Arsenal are unlucky to not get something in the second half of that game, which against that Arsenal team, I think Chelsea probably should have done even better than they did, but still a tricky game away at the Emirates. And yeah, I think we've yet to see them really, really tested, but I think they're doing superbly. And for a new manager, yeah, it does look more of the same at the moment.
It really does. I mean, Beth, I'm going to get you to sort of lead into the next bit as well with this one, because obviously just behind them are Manchester United, also having played 4 games, also having not lost a game as yet. And it's interesting because that would have been obviously fixture number 5 had that gone in. Now, I know there was a lot of talk from the Man United fans. It's a good time to play Chelsea. It's the beginning of the season, so they're still trying to get into the swing of things. United were going great guns at that time as well. And it's very, very, for me, interesting to see how the dynamics are at play at the moment. We could be talking Christmas time, we could be talking 2025 now before that game comes in. But that, at this moment in time, for the top three, looks like a huge situation. That game, Chelsea, Manchester United, almost pivotal as to which one of the two teams, as it stands, could potentially be the ones that challenge Manchester City. Now, I would imagine, because you're not a Manchester United fan, as we all know, you're a Sunderland fan. We'll get to that. But that's you. That's amazing, the things I remember. But you would probably think that Chelsea are likely to win that. Is that kind of where you're thinking? And also slip into that with the Man United Brighton draw. Do you think that draw has potentially derailed the chances that Manchester United might have had? Because Chelsea are obviously 2 points better off now than Manchester United are. How big do you think that disparity in results could be, even though that one game against each other could either pull one side further away or bring the other one right back into it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of interesting things to be said there. I think I can see, obviously, I would put Chelsea's as the favourites to beat Manchester United. However, I do wonder if we see teams like Manchester United, who are also kind of in that top end of the table, we're really noticing a pattern of kind of targeting Chelsea's right-hand side. And I do wonder at some point, is that going to catch up with them? Chelsea have been unbelievable. Sonia Bonpasta's an unbelievable manager. There's an unbelievable squad there, but it is the test of time, and we are still early on in the season. So by no means do I see Chelsea dropping many points. However, I do think like Manchester United have some really strong players like Grace Clinton. I know if it just feels the default at this point to just go straight to her, but she really is just like in such unbelievable form. And I thought Ella Toone had a couple of really good moments as well against Brighton, who are a really strong side. And as you said, it shows how kind of times have changed, Sean, because that Manchester United, I don't think would feel too aggrieved by taking 1 point from Brighton. Brighton are, looking really, really good. So I think it's interesting. And that match getting cancelled obviously raised so many conversations. There's so much to be said about that. But I really do think it's what could be the decisive factor could actually be when both these teams do face Manchester City. I think that those games are going to be massive in deciding that kind of the order of that top three. So I don't have too many clear answers for you there, but I think it could end up being a little bit less predictable than people think. But hey, I could be wrong there and Chelsea could still just run away with it. But I do think that City are really challenging. And I think that although a draw obviously wasn't the ideal result for Manchester United, I don't think that it's anything to be too worried about.
Yeah, I genuinely do think it's going to be very, very interesting. And Sean, we're going to again take this a little bit further because obviously we're taking rightly our time at the moment on the WSL because there is plenty happening there. We've spoken about Brighton. It's sort of a double-edged question that I want to ask you with regards to this. In a way, it's actually a bit of a trinity of a question. The first one I'm asking you purely because you're a Brighton fan. I want to know if you think Brighton can keep up the form that they have had thus far. The only game they lost was against Manchester City, and it was a tough, tight game for City. They certainly did not sail past you by any stretch of imagination. So that would be number one. Number two, though, is this bit about Manchester United and their shot at the top three. But also we're going to take into that the fact that after the international break, it's going to be Manchester United against Arsenal. Now, Arsenal, as Beth already brought up, It's 2-0 in the end, but it took 70 odd minutes for a team. And again, what's interesting is, and I feel like I have to say this, I didn't actually say it on the other channel, but Man United are getting grief from some people about drawing 1-1 with a side that were top four. Arsenal have just about got past West Ham, who are sitting at the bottom of the WSL. Manchester City have squeaked past Aston Villa, who are just above the bottom of the WSL. And everybody's going, oh, how great a City. Good stuff for Arsenal there to get a win. Again, plucky team. But United have done really well in that respect. That game against Arsenal is massive. If Arsenal win it, they get on to 11 points. They're a point clear of Manchester United. And all of a sudden, what was a good start points-wise for Manchester United isn't so great, which then takes us to the third part, which is Jonas Eidevall gone. Possibly part of the reason why there wasn't the cohesiveness that you might have wanted to see from Arsenal. When you put all of those things into the melting pot, not the Brighton bit, that's a separate question, but the Manchester United and the Arsenal bit, that is, again, what a start that is to come out of the international break, to have that fixture to look forward to. And again, just adds everything I just asked Beth could be blown out of the water entirely just by Arsenal beating Manchester United on the other side of the international break. So there's a question in there somewhere, Sean. You decide which one it was.
Just very quickly on the Brighton point, as much as I want to say, yes, we're going to finish top three and it's going to be an amazing season, I'm still very pessimistic. We've got a lot of players that are injury prone. When you look at Kirby, Bremer went off injured. There are a couple who've had niggles across the seasons before. So I think we can finish top six, but I think it'll be difficult to carry on what we're doing right now. Arsenal's a weird one. So I normally go up and watch games in Wales on a Sunday, but it rains a lot here and there was a waterlogged pitch of the one I want to go to. So I had the joy of watching a lot of WSL yesterday, and I did watch the West Ham Arsenal game. And when I was watching it, all I could think of, this is just a mid-table game. It's a mid-table battle. The styles of play, the patterns, everything. It was just, it was so frustrating to watch, especially when a side like Arsenal, that has talent, these players can do amazing things, but they can't seem to do it. And obviously, I think Jonas going is probably a good thing, but who's the obvious replacement? I don't think there's an obvious replacement out there right now. So do you keep Renee Sleggers there? Do you allow her to have time? Or do you focus on getting someone in? Because the longer you leave it in an interim, the more likely the interim's going to get the job. And it's so difficult because that game is huge. The United-Arsenal game is huge. And if I had to plump on a result, I think it would be a draw, because I think United will be the makers of their own downfall in a way. We've seen that before against the bigger teams. That could happen again. But do I think Arsenal have that cutting edge up front to punish United for those mistakes? I'm not too sure. It's two sides with question marks going to come together early in the season, and it'll probably leave us with more question marks than there already are. But it's just it's going to be a really interesting battle, because if someone is to come out on top, then we are talking a whole different narrative about the season. But if a side comes on the wrong side of it, then things are going to blow up for one side or the other.
I'm sure there is a term or a literary device for having more question marks than you started with. Maybe we'll go with an ellipsis of question marks, potentially, by the time we finish that one. Laura, this question strikes home a bit more to you, I think, than it does to anybody else. You'll be a bit more qualified to answer. I'm just going to answer this question since I threw it in there twice. If you're asking me personally, I actually think that the side that we've got now is better than the side from 2 years ago. I'm excited about what they can do, providing everybody is played in the position they should be played in. I think if United continue to play Bizet at right back and we keep shifting players about to play in positions that they don't always play in, I don't think that'll be seen. But I think that absolutely it's better. I think the only one that you would possibly say is not is Battier, with her not being there. But other than that, I don't personally see that it's worse. So Laura, for you, you don't have to worry about the Brighton question, but obviously Man United, Arsenal, they look like being the two sides that are potentially going to be fighting for the third spot minimum, if not trying to challenge for the title. How do you see it going? You know, Jonas leaving wasn't the greatest thing in some respects because he's been a very stable manager who's given you a lot of positives over the course of the last few years. But equally, you know, Sean talking about a cutting edge, selling Miedemar to Manchester City and allowing that to happen, maybe not the most sensible thing to do. What's your feeling around the club at Arsenal for the moment? Do you think you're going to have it within you to make it into the top three? But also, are you a little bit nervous that, you know, the game coming up against Manchester United, if United win that, I mean, that puts you back to sort of 5 points away from the top three. And as we've said many times in the WSL, if you lose a couple of games, that can be fatal. Certainly fatal in terms of winning the title. But if you're going to have three teams like Chelsea, United and City all doing incredibly well, it's a mountain. You're building yourself an Everest or a Kilimanjaro there, really, aren't you? If you don't arrest the decline.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a fan perspective, I'm very scared. Don't really want this international break to end. But I think it's just really impossible to call at the moment because I don't think you can. The Arsenal performance against West Ham absolutely wasn't the best, but how much can you read into it in a week where the manager's resigned and it very much felt like from the press conference quotes that René Schlegel was very much just get to the end of this week, get through it, get the 3 points that were needed, and then we've got this period of time now to kind of address maybe, and she can begin to think of some ideas of her own because it felt very much like it was a Jonas hangover. We were just getting through that period with not very different ideas, but kind of moving through it and getting to the end of the week. I felt like the attitude there. Whether that will continue to be the attitude, I don't know. I can't call that. And maybe we will just kind of stick around with a very similar system, which doesn't actually do much or achieve much. And I think that's a pretty scary prospect because we haven't been playing well so far this season. But I think on the kind of optimistic side, which doesn't really describe me as a fan, so this isn't, but if you were to look at this, I guess, more optimistically, you can think of the international break as maybe a period to reset and for René to go away with her team and implement some of her own ideas and actually go, okay, how do we solve this? How do I now move on from here? Because I do still feel like at the moment it's kind of a period of Jonas Eidevall, and I think this can be a clean break if they use it in the right way. I think as well, though, that's really tough because you've got a lot of players away on international duty. So how much you can actually implement those ideas and communicate those ideas and I guess gel the squad again is really limited by the fact that a lot of the squad will be away during this period. So I think it'll be a really interesting direction. I think like you say, it can be a really pivotal game. I think it can be a more pivotal game for Arsenal than Manchester United because I think if Arsenal lose, it very much feels like they're massively on the back foot then. I think if United lose, they're only still 1 point behind. They've done well so far this season and games against the top 3, top 4 don't necessarily have to define how you do in terms of finishing in that period. But I think if Arsenal lose, it can be a real, questions start coming up. How are we going to fix this? The questions that were asked about Jonas won't go away if you then go on to lose that. And I think there is still kind of a negativity and what's going on here around the club. And if that game's lost, then that will probably only spiral. The players will again struggle with confidence, which I think is another big issue around the club at the moment. So I think it will be a really, really interesting match that could be very decisive.
Interesting. Very good point. And I'm glad you changed this, Samara, because I was going to bring that up. The idea of United playing United did sound quite a thing. I'm not entirely sure we can do that in the league, but I'm all up for it if it means that Manchester United end up with 3 points. That feels like a lovely way to cheat the system. Perhaps we could do that. We could probably get a Man United versus Man United game in easier than we could get a Man United versus Chelsea game in. So, yeah, bang up for that. Right, last question on the WSL before we move on to the Championship. We're not going to look too much into Leicester, Everton, Liverpool and Palace. You've mentioned that already. But what I want to know is you've got a top half of the table that looks like it's gunning for the top 3. The bottom half of the table at the moment looks like it's just trying to keep away from trouble. West Ham, Everton, Aston Villa all on 2 points. Palace, Spurs both on 4. Leicester on 5. Liverpool on 6. It's a very simple question. Based on what you've seen so far up to this international window, which of those 6 is going down? Sean. I know, Beth. I know. What a question. Only 5 games in. Oh, that's what we do here.
West Ham's the answer. Nothing going forward. But yeah, it is just West Ham.
No messing about there. Just West Ham. Simple as that. What a silly question, Barry. Laura, is it as simple as that for you? Bearing in mind you just watched West Ham nearly get a vital point against you.
I think so, yeah. They didn't really threaten Arsenal, even with the problems. Ueki is a good player. I think that's probably their only hope, but the structure doesn't seem to be there to threaten going forward. And yeah, it very much looks like it will be West Ham.
Interesting. Are we going to get a hat trick here, Beth?
I do agree. I think West Ham would be my first answer, but I am going to be annoying and say I'm also a little bit worried about Everton, not necessarily through fault of their own. I do think they potentially could be in a bit of trouble too for various reasons that are probably quite unfortunate.
Fair. I mean, I'll tell you one person who's not going to care about that, and that's Emily Moxham. She'll be absolutely delighted, I think, if Everton were to find their way into the Championship. Prove me wrong. Speaking of the Championship, though, we're going to want to have a look at some of the teams that might be on their way up. And again, what a day that was yesterday in the Championship. Absolutely crazy. Birmingham, of course, still, the top of the table at the moment, having defeated Southampton, who were a really good side last season, but are sort of struggling around the mid-table spot at the moment. The big one, Charlton, we're going to get to that in a second. But, well, no, we're not actually. We're going to start with that because that game has absolutely blown my mind. Again, as you know, I'm working at the football club, so therefore I don't get to see too much of what's going on live. But when I was told about it, oh my God, Sean, like, what's a game? Newcastle 3-1 up. Everything seemingly going their way. They're having a beautiful time of it against the Charlton side. And again, this is a bit of a switchover because if Newcastle win that, they're on 13 points. Charlton also on 13 points. Really closes things down. And then all of a sudden, just all hell breaks loose. It goes entirely wrong. Stubbs gets sent off for a second yellow card in the 83rd minute. And then 10 minutes later, in the 90 plus 4th minute, and then the 90 plus 5 minutes, Barton and Bradley, the old B&B, what on earth is that? From 3-1 down to 3-all. It's unbelievable. Like, I know Newcastle are new to the league, but I mean, wow. People say, where's the entertainment value in some of this lower league stuff? I mean, this is where it is. Like, if you ever watch the lower league shows that we do on a Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock, these are the things we're sort of trying to throw up there. Matches that have really highlighted the stories that are in the lower league. I mean, that is the result of the weekend for me. Like, it's blown my mind to do that so late. And Newcastle, they must be walking off there going, what's just happened? Talk to me a little bit about what's going on there. Because like I say, Birmingham beating Southampton, but Charlton keeping themselves just a couple of points behind. Go on, you talk, because I'm just going to keep on saying, oh my God, I can't believe it.
I love it. And for so long, we've talked about the men's championship being an open bonkers league, and the women's championship is becoming an open bonkers league, and I am here for it. I love it. Yeah, I saw Shania Hill's got a hat trick. I thought that's really good. I think Hales has worked really hard at the start of this season. I think she's earned a run of this like this. So it's the first to get a hat trick. I was really happy. And then I think I was doing something. I saw that Kaylee Barton had pulled one back in the 94th minute. And I thought, oh, there we go. I'm happy for that. Wales have had a good day in the championship yesterday. That's fine by me. I think I went to go and get a drink or something. I didn't even look at any results for another half hour. Went to look back. I saw that Charlton had equal. I thought, how's that happened? It's brilliant. It's amazing. Like you, I'm going to just say it's brilliant all of a sudden. But no, Charlton have been really impressive. I think I said at the start of the season, there's about 6 or 7 teams that could feasibly gain promotion, and these are 2 that can. And Newcastle will be absolutely kicking themselves. Absolutely kicking themselves. That even when you're reduced to 10 players, when you're 3-1 up in the 93rd minute, you don't expect to draw 3-3, even with 10 players on the pitch. Are they just not used to the championship level and the competitiveness yet? It could be that, but all credit to Charlton. Talk about never say die attitude. That is absolutely stunning result. And yeah, and even at the bottom, Sheffield United beating Blackburn, that's a huge result as well, because we didn't think at the bottom who'd be going down, but that's another huge one. But Ali, it's shaping up to be as exciting as it was last season, and I cannot wait to see how it all plays out.
Don't blame you. I mean, I think when this is finished, I'm going to be getting onto YouTube to see whether or not there's any highlights of that game, because I'm dying to see what actually happened there. Laura, for you, Emily Moxham's already come on saying that she thinks Charlton are looking good to win it, but Birmingham have got a pretty good record themselves. You've got London City Lionesses. Obviously, it was their weekend off due to the fact there's only 11 teams. So that they didn't get the chance to play, but they're just behind on 13. They've got a game in hand. Durham, who had obviously defeat against Sunderland, as we know, Beth's side. They're only 4 points behind again with a game in hand. There's so much going on there at the top of the championship. And we were having this conversation last season about how tight it all was. But I mean, you just don't see that too often, do you? And Sean talks about it being bonkers. It is. That's a mad thing. You would not expect it to be 3-1 up in the 93rd minute and then draw the game 3-0.
No, absolutely not. And I think what's super exciting about the league is if that had happened in the WSL between, 2 top clubs that say it's a Chelsea City game, you'd be looking at it and going, well, whoever's kind of given away those 2 points is now looking at not winning the league. But this is like super exciting in the sense that, yes, absolutely amazing that Charlton got back into it, but it's not a dead giveaway that Charlton are definitely going to win the league or Newcastle are definitely not going to win the league, because it does really feel like amongst the top 5 or so teams, anyone can beat anyone in that league. You can even go down to Southampton and say they could challenge any of those top 5 at the moment, and they're currently in 7th. So I think, yeah, just to kind of, I guess I'm just repeating what everyone else said, but it is a really exciting league. And I think Sean mentioned the Blackburn Rovers Sheffield United game, and you can kind of say the same for the bottom of the table. It does look at the moment like Portsmouth potentially are the ones that, and I think it's made more certain this season, I guess, by normally you'd have 2 teams in that relegation battle, and obviously without Reading it's only 1, and Portsmouth have failed to pick up a point so far this season, so they're looking pretty nailed on to go down at the moment. But having said that, Blackburn Rovers and Sheffield United only 3 points above them, so it's only 1 win in it, and that Sheffield United played Blackburn at the weekend and got a really important 3 points, their first 3 points of the season. So I think at both ends of the table there is that element of excitement, but definitely at the top, really exciting. In terms of who I'd call, it's really tough. Birmingham City are looking really good at the moment. But yeah, I don't think you can call it this early on, honestly, in the championship. Definitely Charlton up there, definitely Birmingham up there, definitely London City Lionesses up there.
It's interesting you say that, Laura, because that may end up being one of the questions. If I was you, I'd try and solve that conundrum before we get to the end of the show. Otherwise, you may find that a tricky question to answer. Beth, I'm not going to go on about it too much. I'm just going to get you to go straight into there, because those are the sort of results that make a league special and exciting to watch. The fact that you could be watching a game, and it's not every week, you know, we're not trying to sit here and say if you watch the Championship every single week, you're going to see something absolutely mad like that. But what you are going to see is entertaining football, as Laura's just spoken about there. The fact that Blackburn lost to Sheffield United, they get their first points. It's huge what's going on there at the moment, these 11 sides. What did you make just of the weekend for the Championship? Because it honestly just, it baffles me just how exciting it can be and how much it's changing week after week.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, another really big weekend. I feel like I say that every week, but massive result for Sheffield United, not so good for Blackburn. Unfortunate for Portsmouth to get another loss, especially 1-0. I assume they'll be really disappointed with that because it does at times feel like they're getting closer to competing with these other teams, but they're just not quite there yet. And that's why I think we're like a lot of people are resigning themselves to the fact that Portsmouth might just kind of drop back down, which is a shame if so, but you never know. I was at the Birmingham Southampton game and I thought Birmingham looked really, really strong. Could see why they're top. They just play such kind of direct attacking football and just are so resilient because there were times at kind of later on in the first half and then kind of midway through the second half where Southampton would suddenly have these bursts of momentum, but they just kind of kept their cool. And even when they were a little bit out of shape, not looking the best, it wasn't really a problem. Southampton couldn't quite trouble them, didn't massively come close to doing so, apart from maybe once or twice. So yeah, that's really big for them. Obviously, we've spoken about the Newcastle Charlton game. I think I checked the score in like around the like 85th minute or something and thought, wow, Newcastle have done it. And then it finished and I was like, oh no, they actually haven't. But a point from Charlton, even though for a newly promoted side, I know we know how good Newcastle are, but still to take a point from Charlton, who really were the runners up last year, is so impressive. And Newcastle will be kicking themselves not to have taken 3, but I don't think that takes away from how fantastic they have been. Yeah, so it's honestly like the Championship is just unbelievable. And I think that's exactly it. Like, even if it's not a kind of last minute 3-3 comeback, it's unlikely that you're ever going to be bored, I think it's fair to say, with the Championship. It really is such an exciting league. And I'm so glad that we get to come on here and talk about it. Also had the Sunderland-Durham, bit of a derby up there, which Sunderland won 2-1. I think that Durham are kind of neglected a little bit in the conversations that are often had about women's football up in the Northeast. And I know that Sunderland did win, but I do want to argue that kind of that point still stands. And Durham are also a really strong side. They're up there as well. There's only 4 points between first and fourth in the table, and we're still pretty early on. So yeah, it's a big season ahead. I've noticed Emily's commented about Birmingham potentially maybe fizzling away. We've seen that happen before. And I don't know, maybe it really is too early to call it, especially in a league like this where we see it kind of go down to the final day and every point counts at the top, at the bottom, goal difference counts. But Birmingham really are playing at a really high level, I think. I think they're going to be a tough team for anyone to beat going forward now that they're really kind of like finding their groove as the season progresses. But yeah, we'll see.
Absolutely will. You are not wrong at all. Emily asking me, very nice of you to try and get me involved in the show. Thank you. Has anyone stood out to me in the Championship? Yes, they have. And it won't surprise you with my Southern biased hat being thrown in. It would be London City Lionesses. We're talking about how good Charlton are, but last week they beat them 2-0. So, London City Lionesses are right up there in terms of how they're doing. So for me, they are definitely a side to be looking out for. Especially, like I say, 3 points behind Birmingham City as it stands. They've got that game in hand. So, obviously the money's been pumped into them, with the Kang dynasty doing what they're doing. But I think, yeah, absolutely, they are the ones that you kind of got to keep your eyes on. Sorry, Sifaway saying, weren't Sheffield in contention of promotion last season? I think they were, weren't they? They were sort of around about there, maybe not right at the very death, but they were there sort of running up to it, and then they did a bit of a Birmingham, as Emily would say, and they did drop off a bit, but they were certainly doing better last season than they currently are. And Amara asking a bit of an 11th hour question there. We've kind of covered this before, I think, in terms of expansion, but I do believe that's the plan, to end up expanding. But obviously, Nuco, as they are or were, are just trying to sort out getting everything sorted within the women's game to begin with. So probably not this season. Well, definitely not this season because they're playing it. Probably not next season. But it's I would imagine, in the pipeline for sure. A very simple question for you all now, to sort of for your penultimate one. Beth's already mentioned Portsmouth. It's not looking great, as we mentioned. Blackburn Rovers, Sheffield United, both on 3. There's a bit of a gap then between them and Sunderland, which is, still achievable, but it's looking like any one of those 3. Beth's already said she thinks it's probably going to be Portsmouth dropping down. Laura, Sean, would you both choose Portsmouth as well if you had to plump for a side to go down? Yeah, I'm not going to bother unmuting for that. I'm just going to nod at Barry. Okay, superb. So for anybody who's listening to this on the drive, both Laura and Sean nodded their head in agreement. I wouldn't say emphatically, almost like with a resigned look upon their faces. Yes, Barry, stupid question, move on. So as a result, they fully deserve the next question. And I'm going to start with Laura, seeing as how she was so choppy about it earlier on. Who is currently your favourites, or who are currently your favourites to get the promotion spot? Emily Moxham is not calling it for Birmingham. So what do you reckon, Laura? Who is going to be potentially replacing West Ham in the 25-26 season?
I think at this stage I'm going to disagree with Emily and go for Birmingham, because I do think they have more about them this season than they did last season. I think they look stronger. But yeah, I mean, they do have a propensity to drop off. She's not wrong, but I think they will do it this season. But yeah, I think that's if I've got to put. I do think it's too hard to call at this stage, and I'm sure someone can come back and clip this and tell me I was wrong at the end of the season. But if I'm going to have to say anyone at this point, I think Birmingham would be my shout.
Interesting. So there we go. Well done, Sean.
Oh, I don't know. Which is a terrible answer for a show like this. I don't know. I was looking at their form and their upcoming games and where they are on the table, and I think Bristol City have got a half-decent run here to make up some ground quite quickly. I think 3 games on the trot. They've got Sunderland and then Newcastle. If they can win those 2, they're right up amongst it before they welcome Charlton down to Ashton Gate. So, sneaky shout. I'm going to go Bristol City.
Wow, I mean that's left field, bringing us aside from the middle there, and then throwing them up to the top all of a sudden, putting a little bit of pressure on them, like your style. Well done. Be interesting. I don't know how I'd feel about that. Like, it's not that I dislike Bristol City, but when you think about, in the nicest possible way, how poor they were in the WSL last season, they didn't really impact what was going on in the league. If they were to go up, I think that would possibly be a bit of a poor indictment on the Championship. We're saying how exciting it is, but actually if that's going to be the standard, we don't want that yo-yoing, do we? Which is why it's nice to see Crystal Palace, giving a good account of themselves at the early part of it. So don't get me wrong, if Bristol City have sorted the problems and they can come out and do quite well, here we go, I'm going to get in trouble now. I tried my best. I just went with what our phonics said. Let me see what I've done wrong here. How to pronounce my name? CPware. Do you know what? You could have given me 5 million guesses and I wouldn't have gone for that one. So I'll see what I can do. CPware. Thank you for breaking it down for me. Appreciate that. CPware. So thank you. Who haven't I asked? Beth. talk to me. What do you reckon? Who is most likely to come up next season on current form?
Gonna have to agree with Laura there and say Birmingham City. I just think they look like they have the potential to go on and be really consistent. And I think what they have that maybe some other teams who would also be in the running for this conversation might lack a little bit more is what we spoke about earlier in the WSL, that Manchester City have that grit to just kind of get the job done, even if it's an off day, kind of whatever else might be going on. And I think that Amy Merricks is a really good manager, and I think that they have a really good thing going with their squad. I think the mindset looks really, really good for what they are hoping to achieve this season. So, yeah, I definitely think that they are a realistic shout, but we know how close the championship is and we know how quickly things can change. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to stand corrected as always.
Very nice. My simple answer to that is London City Lionesses. As I already said, that's why they've stood out for me. I think they're going to surprise her, and I think that'd be quite a thing as well to have London City Lionesses up in the WSL. That would ruffle a few feathers, I think, for sure. Well, there we go. That's it. That's our recap. We've taken you through the WSL. We've taken you through the championship. We've held your hand, but now it is bedtime, and there is no Jackanory. So we just have to lay you down to sleep. And that'll be it now for another 7 days. Although you can, of course, catch us on Lower League Lingo on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. There's no Gareth, our sad face. Don't feel too bad for him. He's off on holiday, having the time of his life. I believe he's in Rome. I think he said he was going to. So he's having a lovely time over in Italy. But we have managed to get a replacement for him. So do come and join us Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Sean, if people have enjoyed your impartial and unbiased opinion on the WSL, where could they find more of it?
So my Twitter is their actual Mister. It's the same on TikTok. It's international break. It's my favourite time of any international. I love the international break. Anything Wales related, I'll be there. Content out most days now over the international break. Off to Slovakia in 2 days to go and watch the first leg and cover that. So yeah, anything Wales related, drop me a follow. And thank you, Barry, for having me on.
Glad to have you. You were doing brilliantly right up until you mentioned how the international break is your favourite part. It's the worst time for me. But there we go. Glad you're happy. It's nice to see a smile on your face. So that's good. Imari, you're absolutely welcome. We love trying to focus. And to be fair, I'm sure Sean won't mind me saying this. We were having a little chat the other day, and actually the wide varied stuff that we try and throw out on here, this is why we do it, because we want to try and make sure that everybody feels like there is a bit of a discussion about something that is maybe close to them, or that can give them the opportunity to learn something new. So really, really pleased that you are like, oh my goodness, what's this from CPWare? Can we have a show discussing the league? We've done the Liga introduction, so go back and have a look at that. There is a show that takes you into that. I'm sure we'll get somewhere with that as well. And didn't you do Bundesliga last week, Laura?
Connor did, yeah. Bundesliga's up from last Monday.
Was you not on that one?
I wasn't on that one. I don't know enough about German football. Sadly.
More than me, my dear. More than me. But there we go. So there was one last week. So just pop back and have a look at that. And that'll be quite in date. It's only going to miss one weekend's information. So there we go. But yes, we do try and throw a few out there. Laura, whilst we're talking to you, where could people find all of your works and stuff?
Yeah. All of it will be, I'll put it on my Twitter at Laura_HWD. And yeah, I'm writing for She's a Baller at the moment. Pretty exciting article coming very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that one. And doing the Kids Were All Right podcast if you want a bit of women's football history.
There we go. And of course, last but not least, the wonderful Beth, where can people find all of your work?
So like Laura, everything kind of goes out on Twitter, but I write for her Football Hub, and most of my work is on the halfway line. Had some stuff from Sunday's championship game down in Southampton go up tonight if anybody fancies a little bit of reading on that. Got to have a really good chat with Amy Merricks after that game. So yeah, if you're interested, pop over to the halfway line.
There we go. Not the real halfway line. If you go to that, again, I tell you this every time, she won't be there. It's the metaphorical place on Twitter. So just don't be sure, where is she? It said she'd be here. Because there's too many of them for her to be in one place. It's been superb. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, guys. Glad you all enjoyed it. And we will be back next week with a special mystery host. Who could it be? Tune in next week to find out. Night all.